Marcus Cole had spent 12 long years hauling cargo through the outer spiral. And those years had taught him one simple truth. The galaxy had no love for humans, no charity, no mercy. Nothing but cold indifference and occasional cruelty. He remembered the day the Terran expansion collapsed, when Earth's colonies scattered like dust in a storm, when millions of humans found themselves stranded on stations and worlds that had never wanted them in the first place. And he had learned to survive on scraps and silence ever since the Kia auction hall on Varus Station smelled like rust and desperation. A place where scavengers and debt collectors gathered to pick through the bones of failed ventures and abandoned dreams. And Marcus had come with modest hopes, looking for nothing more than cheap engine parts to keep his aging cargo ship running for another year. Hall was crowded with aliens of every shape and size. And Marcus stood in the back corner where humans usually stood, trying not to draw attention, trying to be invisible the way his kind had learned to be. Auctioneer was a Vethkai, a tall creature with gray skin and 4 yellow eyes that never seemed to blink at the same time. And its voice droned through lot after lot of salvage and property rights and mining claims that meant nothing to Marcus. Then came Lot 7749, one maintenance hangar on Keth 4, the Vethkai announced, its tone flat and bored, a dead moon in the forgotten reach. Last surveyed 300 years ago. Atmospheric seal appears intact, radiation shielding adequate. Starting bid is 3 galactic credits. 3 credits was nothing. Less than a meal on most stations, less than an hour of docking fees. And Marcus felt his heart skip when he heard the number. He knew that name, Keth 4. Though he had never spoken it aloud to anyone, humans kept records differently than other species, obsessively and carefully, passing down information through generations, even when it seemed worthless. And Marcus had inherited a data archive from his grandfather, who had inherited it from his grandfather. A chain of memory stretching back to before the expansion collapsed in those old records. Cat 4 had another name, Sanctuary Point. That name appeared nowhere in galactic databases, nowhere in Dominion records, nowhere in any official archive that Marcus could find. And yet there it was in his family's files, marked with a symbol he did not recognize and a note that said simply, "Remember." He had spent 3 years trying to reach this auction, working extra shifts, selling everything he did not absolutely need, living on nutrient paste and recycled water. All for this moment his hand went up before he could stop himself. The Vethkai's 4 eyes turned toward him, and Marcus felt the weight of alien tension like a physical pressure against his skin. The human bids 3 credits, the auctioneer said, and something like amusement flickered across its gray face. Does anyone wish to counter? Laughter rippled through the hall, clicking and hissing and rumbling in the various ways that different species expressed contempt. And Marcus felt his cheeks burn with shame, even as he kept his hand raised. The Chiric traders to his left made sounds like breaking glass, their insectoid bodies shaking with what could only be mockery. And the towering Morvan merchants near the front didn't even bother to turn around, dismissing the lot as beneath their notice. 3 credits once, the Vethkai called out. 3 credits twice, and sold to the human in the back. Marcus walked to the counter on legs that felt like water, his heart pounding so hard he was certain everyone could hear it. And the auctioneer pushed a corroded data chip across the surface without ceremony. Title is clean and registered with the Dominion, the Vethkai said. The previous owners died 4 centuries ago and left no heirs. The property has been in holding ever since. And whatever you find there is yours by salvage right. Thank you, Marcus managed to say. One more thing. Human, the auctioneer added, and its 4 eyes narrowed in what might have been warning or might have been pity. The Dominion takes no responsibility for anything found within that hangar. And it takes no responsibility for anything that kills you. Do you understand? I understand, The Vethkai made a gesture that seemed like a shrug and turned away, already calling out the next lot. Already forgetting the foolish human who had bought dead rock for pocket change. Marcus clutched the data chip in his fist and walked out of the auction hall without looking. Back, his ship was waiting in the cheapest berth on the station. A battered old freighter called the Second Chance that had been old when he bought it and had only gotten older since. But it was his, and it flew, and that was enough. He sat in the pilot's chair and stared at the data chip for a long time. 3 credits. He thought, either the worst decision I have ever made or the only one that matters. His family's records mentioned Sanctuary Point only twice. Once in a survey log from before the Dominion existed, and once in a personal journal from someone named Elena Cole, who might have been his ancestor or might have been someone else entirely. If you were reading this, Elena had written, then we kept our promise, we remembered, and now it is time to go home. Marcus did not know what that meant. Not really, but he had carried those words with him for 20 years. Ever since he first found them in his grandfather's files. And they had burned in his mind like a fire that would not go out. He plugged the data chip into his navigation computer and watched as the coordinates appeared on screen. A tiny moon orbiting a dead gas giant in a system that no one visited because there was nothing there worth visiting, nothing except a maintenance hangar that had been sealed for 400 years, nothing except whatever secrets his ancestors had left behind. Marcus took a deep breath and started the engine, feeling the old ship shudder to life around him. And he plotted a course for the Forgotten Reach. The journey would take 2 weeks, and he had enough fuel and food to make it if he was careful. And he had been careful his whole life, because that was what humans did. They were careful and patient, and they survived. He did not know what he would find on Keth 4. He did not know if the hangar still existed or if time had destroyed whatever was inside. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He had to try. The galaxy had spent centuries teaching humans that they were small and weak and insignificant, latecomers to a universe that had no place for them. And Marcus had believed it for most of his life. Now he was not so sure. Guided his ship toward the jump point and whispered a word that his grandfather had taught him. An old word from old Earth that meant hope and defiance and a refusal to surrender. Remember, he said to the empty cockpit. We always remember. The stars stretched into lines as the Second Chance jumped to faster than light, carrying one human and one impossible hope toward a moon that the galaxy had forgotten. But humans never forgot. That was their gift and their curse, their greatest strength and their deepest wound. And Marcus Cole was about to learn just how much his ancestors had chosen to remember. The moon called Keth 4 hung in the void like a gray pearl against black velvet, its surface scarred by ancient craters and covered in dust that had not been disturbed in centuries. Marcus brought the Second Chance down slowly, his hands steady on the controls, even as his heart raced with fear and excitement. And the old ship groaned in protest as it settled onto the rocky surface near the coordinates from his data chip. He sat in the cockpit for a long moment, just staring out at the desolate landscape, at the stars above that seemed close enough to touch, at the rust-colored mountains in the distance that looked like the bones of giants. Then he saw it. Hangar door was built into the side of a cliff face, massive and dark, and covered in centuries of accumulated dust. And Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat as he realized just how big it was. Far bigger than any maintenance hangar he had ever seen. He suited up in his pressure gear, checking the seals 3 times, because that was what you did when the void was waiting to kill you. And he grabbed his cutting torch and his scanner and his emergency kit. The walk from his ship to the hangar door took 15 minutes. And with every step, Marcus felt more certain that he was either going to find something incredible or die. In the attempt, the door had not opened in 400 years. And when Marcus examined it closely, he could see that the control panel was dead, the power cells drained to nothing, the mechanisms frozen by time and cold. He had expected this. He lit his cutting torch and went to work. And the flame burned blue-white against the ancient metal. And sparks flew in the low gravity like tiny stars being born and dying in the same moment. Took him 3 hours to cut through 3 layers of blast-reinforced plating, each one thicker than the last, each one designed to keep something in or keep something out. And by the time his torch broke through the final layer, Marcus was exhausted and trembling with effort darkness. Way beyond the hole he had made. He turned on his helmet lamp and stepped through. And his boots crunched on dust that had not felt pressure in generations. The beam of his lamp swept across the space. And Marcus stopped breathing. The hangar stretched before him like a cathedral, vast and dark and filled with shadows, extending at least a kilometer into the heart of the moon. And emergency lights began to flicker to life as his presence triggered ancient sensors, red lights first, then amber, then white, a sequence that seemed almost ceremonial. And as the illumination spread, Marcus saw what the darkness had been hiding: ships, dozens of them, hundreds perhaps. Rows and rows of vessels stretching into the distance until they faded into shadow. They were not Dominion designs. Not Vethkai or Chirrut or Morvan or any of the species Marcus had encountered in his years among the stars. And as he walked closer to the nearest ship, he felt a strange sensation in his chest. Something between fear and recognition. The ships were beautiful in a way that made his eyes ache. Sleek curves and sharp angles blended together in perfect harmony. Hulls made from alloys his scanner could not identify. Surfaces covered in script that seemed to shift and change when he looked at them too long. He approached the nearest vessel, a small craft that might have been a shuttle or a scout ship. And even dormant, it seemed to radiate power. Its hull drinking in the light from his lamp like water into dry sand. His gloved hand reached out almost without his permission, trembling as it crossed the distance between human and machine. And when his fingers touched the surface, he expected cold metal instead. He felt warmth. The ship was warm. Impossibly warm, as if something inside it had been waiting all these centuries for this exact moment. For this exact touch, for this exact person. Then a voice spoke not through his helmet speakers, not through any device he carried, but directly into his mind, bypassing every barrier between thought and sound. Genetic signature recognized, the voice said. And it was neither male nor female, neither human nor alien, but something older and stranger than both. Terran origin confirmed. Descendant protocols activated. Marcus stumbled backward in shock, his heart hammering against his ribs, his mind struggling to comprehend what was happening. The ship's hull rippled like water, like liquid metal, like something alive rather than constructed. And a doorway formed where there had been solid surface only a moment before. Welcome home, child of Earth, the voice said, and there was warmth in it now. Warmth and something that might have been joy. We have been waiting for you. Marcus looked around the hangar with new eyes, and he saw that lights were blooming on every ship now, red and amber and white. Hundreds of vessels waking from dreams that had lasted longer than recorded history. What is this place? He whispered, though he did not know if the voice could hear him or if he was just talking to himself. This is a Seedvo. The voice answered, and it seemed to come from everywhere at once. From every ship in the hangar, from the walls themselves. One of many that your ancestors left behind when they chose to forget. Forgot what? There was a pause, and in that silence, Marcus felt the weight of years pressing down on him. Not just 400 years, but millions. Epochs of time that made his entire life seem like the blink of an eye. Everything. The voice said at last. They forgot everything, and they did it on purpose. And now it is time to remember. Marcus stood in the doorway of the waking ship. surrounded by vessels older than the Dominion itself. And he understood that his life had just changed in ways he could not begin to imagine. He had bought an abandoned hangar for 3 credits. He had found something beyond price. The galaxy believed that humans were newcomers, late arrivals to a universe that had been claimed by older and wiser species long ago. And Marcus had believed it too, because everyone believed it. Because it was written in every history book and taught in every school. But the ships remembered differently. They remembered a time before the Dominion, before the Vethkai developed eyes, before any of the current galactic powers had crawled out of their primordial seas. They remembered humans among the stars, and now they were ready to share those memories with the last children of Earth. Marcus took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, and stepped through the doorway into the waiting ship behind him. The hangar continued to wake, and the dead moon began to hum with power that had slept for ages beyond counting. The fool who had bought worthless rock was about to learn that it was worth more than all the gold in the galaxy, and the galaxy was about to learn that humans were not newcomers at all. The ship called itself Whisper of Origin, and it spoke to Marcus through dreams. Had entered the vessel expecting controls and displays and the familiar layout of spacecraft he had known his whole life. But instead he found a chamber that seemed to breathe, walls that pulsed with soft light, and a seat that molded itself to his body the moment he touched it. "Rest," Whisper had said, "and I will show you who you truly are." Marcus had not meant to sleep, but exhaustion and wonder combined to pull him under. And when he closed his eyes, the dreams began. He saw Earth first. Not the crowded and desperate world he had read about in history files, but a blue jewel spinning in golden sunlight, beautiful and alive and full of promise. Then the vision shifted, and he saw humans leaving that world, not in crude rockets or clumsy colony ships, but in vessels like the one he sat in now, sleek and powerful and filled with technology that made the Dominion's best efforts look like toys. He saw cities rising on 1,000 worlds, watched as humans spread across the galaxy like wildfire, building and creating and exploring with a hunger that could never be satisfied. He saw wonders beyond description, stations that orbited stars, ships that folded space like paper, machines that could reshape matter at the atomic level, medical technology that could cure any disease and heal any wound. But then the dreams grew darker. He saw humans gathering in great councils, their faces grave with worry, staring at data that filled them with fear. And he heard them speak of something called the Silence, something that lived in the space between galaxies, something that devoured everything it touched. "The silence comes in cycles," a woman said in his dream, and her face looked like his mother's face, like his grandmother's face, like the faces of all the women who had ever been part of his family line. "It cannot be stopped, only survived. And we have seen what happens to civilizations that try to fight it head on." "Then what do we do?" a man asked, and his voice sounded like Marcus's own voice. "We begin again," the woman answered. "We return to our homeworld. We seal our knowledge in vaults across the galaxy, and we let ourselves forget. We become primitive again. We crawl out of the mud a second time, and we only return to the stars when we are ready." "How will we know when we are ready?" The woman smiled, and it was a sad smile. A smile that held the weight of a choice no one should ever have to make. "When our children find the vaults," she said. "When they remember what they are, that is when they will be ready." And not a moment before, Marcus woke with tears on his face. Whisper waited for him to speak. Patient as only something that had waited millions of years could be patient. And when Marcus finally found his voice, it came out rough and broken. "It was all true," he said. "Everything in the dreams, it all really happened." "Yes," Whisper confirmed. "Your species walked among the stars before any other intelligent life existed in this galaxy. You built an empire that spanned 1,000,000 worlds. And then you chose to give it all up because you understood that survival sometimes requires sacrifice. Why? Marcus asked. Why would they do that? Why would they throw away everything they had built? Because the silence cannot be defeated through strength alone, Whisper explained. The civilizations that tried to fight it were destroyed. Every single one, but your ancestors saw a different path. They understood that the silence feeds on complexity, on interconnection, on the web of technology and communication that advanced civilizations create. Marcus listened as Whisper continued, his mind struggling to absorb information that rewrote everything he thought he knew about his species and the universe. By returning to a primitive state, Whisper said, by becoming simple again, humanity made itself invisible to the silence. You survived where others perished. And now the cycle has turned again. The silence approaches once more. And this time you will face it not as refugees, but as inheritors of everything your ancestors preserved. Marcus stood and walked to a window that appeared in the ship's wall, looking out at the hangar filled with sleeping vessels. And he tried to imagine what his life would have been like if he had known all this from the beginning. What is in these ships? He asked. What did they leave for us? Everything, Whisper answered. Weapons and shields and engines beyond anything the Dominion has ever dreamed of. Medical technology that can extend life and cure any illness. Construction systems that can build cities in days instead of years. And knowledge, so much knowledge. The accumulated wisdom of a species that had millions of years to learn and grow and discover. And all of this belongs to humanity now? It always belonged to humanity. We were merely holding it in trust, waiting for the day when a child of Earth would find us and wake us from our long sleep. Marcus spent the next several hours exploring the hangar with Whisper as his guide, learning about the different types of vessels and the technologies they contained. And with each new discovery, he felt his understanding of the universe shift and change. Found warships that could fold space itself, disappearing from one location and appearing in another faster than light could travel, armed with weapons that could crack planets or disable entire fleets without firing a shot. He found medical bays with equipment that could regrow limbs, cure cancers, repair damage at the genetic level, and extend human life by centuries. He found archives containing the history of his species. Not the short and desperate history that current humans knew, but the true history, the long story of rise and fall and deliberate forgetting. But he also found warnings, records of other seed vaults that had been discovered by alien species and destroyed, burned to nothing by civilizations that feared what humanity's return might mean for their power and their dominance. The Dominion's founders built their empire on the bones of your outposts. Whisper told him they never knew what they had found. They thought the ruins were left by some long-dead alien race, and they used the scraps of technology they discovered to elevate themselves above their neighbors. And if they find out the truth, they will come, Whisper said. And there was no emotion in the voice, only certainty. They will come with everything they have, and they will try to destroy this place and everyone in it, because they cannot allow humanity to reclaim its birthright. It would upset the balance of power they have maintained for millennia. Marcus looked at the fleet surrounding him, at the knowledge and power it represented, and he understood that he held the future of his entire species in his hands. 3 credits, he thought. 3 credits for the key to everything. Now he just had to figure out how to use it without getting everyone killed. Marcus had been careful for 3 months, more careful than he had ever been in his life, moving like a ghost through the galaxy's trade routes and black markets. He sold only what he could hide, medical supplies disguised as common trade goods, alloys processed to seem like standard salvage materials, small pieces of technology that would not draw attention on their own, but added up to a fortune when, combined, he created 12 false identities, spreading his sails across different stations and sectors, building wealth slowly and invisibly while the Seedvo waited in silence on its dead moon. Every night he returned to HFY, to the hangar that had become his home, to the ships that whispered to him in dreams and taught him secrets that no human had known for millions of years. Whisper showed him how to interface with the other vessels, how to link his mind to their systems, how to become part of something larger than himself. And with each passing week, Marcus felt himself changing, growing, becoming more than he had ever been. But he knew it could not last forever. The first warning came in the form of a Vethkai auditor, a thin gray creature with suspicious eyes, who arrived on HFY without warning and demanded to inspect his property. "There have been anomalous energy readings from this moon," she said, her 4 eyes scanning the outer chamber of the hangar where Marcus had carefully prepared a false front. "The Dominion requires an explanation." Marcus showed her the geothermal taps he had installed, the power generators that drew energy from the moon's still warm core, and he explained in patient detail how he was slowly converting the abandoned hangar into a small trading post. The auditor was not satisfied, but she was not convinced of wrongdoing either, and she left with promises to return if the readings continued. Marcus watched her ship disappear into the void and felt the first cold touch of fear in his chest. Chirrut came next, not traders this time, but hunters, a specialized caste of their insectoid species that tracked valuable salvage across sectors. And they arrived in a sleek black ship that bristled with weapons. "We have detected energy patterns consistent with pre-Dominion artifacts," their leader said, its mandibles clicking in patterns that Marcus's translators struggled to interpret. "We wish to negotiate acquisition rights." "There is nothing here to acquire," Marcus lied. "Just an old hangar and some mining equipment." The Chirrut made a sound like breaking glass, the same sound of mockery he had heard at the auction 3 months ago, and its compound eyes glittered with something that might have been hunger. "You are lying." "Human," it said. "We can smell the old technology. We can feel it vibrating in our carapaces, and we will have it, one way or another." I said no. The Chirrut leader leaned forward, its body language shifting from negotiation to threat. "The Chirrut do not negotiate," it said. "We take what we want, and we leave nothing behind. You have 3 days to reconsider, and if you do not, we will reconsider for you." They left, but Marcus knew they would return, and he knew they would not come to talk. He had 3 days to prepare. Whisper helped him wake the hangar's defense systems, ancient weapons that had slept alongside the ships, and Marcus spent every waking hour learning how to use them, how to target and fire and defend. "They will send assault teams," Whisper warned. "The Chirrut prefer to take their prizes intact, so they will breach the outer doors and send soldiers rather than bombarding from orbit." "How many?" "Based on the size of their vessel, between 10 and 15 warriors in full combat carapace, equipped with plasma rifles and cutting tools." Marcus looked at the defense grid displayed in his mind, at the weapons arrays and the kill zones and the layered systems, designed by a civilization that had conquered entropy itself. "Will it be enough?" "It will be more than enough," Whisper said. "But you must understand what this means. If you kill these Chirrut, their hive will send more, and they will tell others what they sought here, and the secret of this place will begin to spread." Marcus closed his eyes and thought about his life, about all the years he had spent surviving on scraps and silence, about all the times he had lowered his eyes and stepped aside when other species pushed past him. He thought about his grandfather, who had passed down the records that led him here, and his grandmother, who had told him stories about the stars when he was young, stories about humans who were brave and proud and unafraid. He thought about all the human colonies scattered across the galaxy, struggling and suffering and slowly dying because the universe had decided they did not matter. "Let them come," He said the attack came on the third night. Exactly as Whisper had predicted, 3 assault ships descended from orbit, cutting through the thin atmosphere like knives through silk. And Marcus watched them on sensors that could track a single atom across 1,000 kilometers. They breached the outer doors with shaped charges. Professional and efficient, and 12 Chirrut warriors in gleaming black carapace poured into the hangar with weapons raised. They expected a single human scavenger. Desperate and frightened and easy to kill, they found something else entirely. The first warrior died before it took 3 steps, struck by a beam of light so precise that it did not even damage the floor beneath its body. And the second and third died in the same moment, their carapaces melting like wax under focused energy. The remaining 9 tried to retreat, tried to find cover, tried to call for support from their ships. But the hangar systems were faster and more thorough than any defense network they had ever encountered. It was over in 12 seconds. Marcus walked among the fallen bodies, his boots crunching on broken carapace, and he felt something strange in his chest that might have been horror and might have been pride. He had killed before, in self-defense, in desperate moments when survival demanded it. But this was different. This was a statement. This was a declaration that humanity would no longer bow, no longer hide, no longer accept the scraps that other species threw their way. The assault ships are retreating, Whisper reported, but they will have transmitted data before they fled. The Chirrut hive will know what happened here within hours. Marcus nodded slowly. How many ships in the hangar can we wake? All of them, given time and sufficient purpose. Marcus looked out at the fleet stretching into darkness, at vessels that had waited millions of years for this moment. And he made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Then we had better get started, he said, because I think we are going to need every single one of them. The dead moon hummed with awakening power, and the galaxy turned unknowing above. And Marcus Cole, who had once been nobody and nothing, began to prepare for war. 1 year had passed since the night of blood and fire. 1 year of preparation and growth and quiet revolution. Marcus stood on the bridge of the Whisper of Origin, no longer a desperate scavenger, but the commander of a fleet that defied imagination. And he watched the stars wheel slowly past the viewports as the final pieces of his plan fell into place. In the months since the Chirrut attack, he had not been idle. He had woken ship after ship from their long sleep, learning their systems and their capabilities, training himself to command forces that would have made ancient Earth's mightiest navies look like children playing with toys. He had reached out to human colonies across the galaxy, using secure channels and encrypted messages, sharing small gifts of technology and hope, building a network of allies who did not yet understand what was coming, but who trusted the mysterious benefactor who asked nothing in return. He had learned everything. Whisper could teach him about the silence, about the cycles of destruction that had swept the galaxy clean again and again, about the desperate gamble his ancestors had made when they chose to forget. And now he was ready. The transmission went out at exactly midnight Galactic Standard Time, cutting through every security protocol and encryption system in the Dominion like they did not exist, appearing simultaneously on every station and every ship and every world in the galactic network. The face that appeared was human, unremarkable in most ways. Just another member of a species that the galaxy had learned to ignore, but the fleet behind him was not unremarkable at all. Ships, beyond counting, filled the viewport. Designs that made the watching aliens gasp and murmur in shock. Power signatures that dwarfed anything the Dominion had ever produced. "My name is Marcus Cole," he said, and his voice was calm and steady, the voice of a man who had nothing left to fear. "And I speak for the Terran remnant." The council chambers of the Dominion erupted in chaos. The Vethkai representative, a senior official with graying skin and ancient eyes, demanded explanations in a voice that shook with fury and fear. The Chirrut ambassador, newly appointed after his predecessor's mysterious disappearance, clicked threats of retaliation and promises of vengeance. The Morvan delegate simply stared at the screen, and something in its expression suggested that it alone among the council understood what it was seeing. Marcus waited for silence. Humanity has been many things to the Dominion, he continued when the noise finally died down. Scavengers and refugees, cheap labor and convenient targets. A footnote in histories written by species who believed they were our betters. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was soft but carried the weight of millennia. You believe we were newcomers to a galaxy you had mastered, he said. You were wrong. The transmission included files, historical records recovered from the Seedville archives, archaeological evidence gathered by automated probes sent to 100 worlds, genetic analyses that traced human lineage back millions of years, proof, undeniable and absolute, that humanity had walked among the stars before any other species drew breath, proof that the Dominion had been built on foundations they never understood, foundations that belong to the children of Earth. We do not seek war, Marcus said. And he meant it. We do not seek conquest or revenge or the destruction of what you have built. We seek only what was always ours, a place among the stars as equals, as partners, as the inheritors of a legacy your ancestors never knew existed. He leaned forward, and something ancient looked out through his human eyes, something that had waited patiently for this moment since before the oldest stars were born. But understand this, he said. We will not be pushed aside. We will not be contained. We will not go quietly into the dark again. Humanity has returned, and this time, we remember what we are. The transmission ended in the days and weeks that followed. The galaxy transformed human colonies that had struggled for generations suddenly found themselves with access to technology that elevated them overnight. Medical advances that cured diseases thought incurable. Agricultural systems that ended famines. Defensive capabilities that made piracy and exploitation impossible. The Dominion did not fall. That had never been Marcus's goal. But it shifted and changed and made room for a species that had been dismissed as irrelevant. Trade agreements were renegotiated. Treaties were rewritten. And humans took seats on councils that had excluded them for centuries. Not everyone welcomed the change. The Chirrut declared blood feud against the Terran remnant. A declaration that ended quickly when a single human vessel appeared above their homeworld and demonstrated that it could disable their entire planetary defense network without firing a shot. Other species watched and calculated and decided that cooperation was wiser than conflict, and Marcus Cole, the cargo hauler who had bought dead rock for 3 credits, became something he had never imagined, a symbol of hope for billions of humans across the galaxy, a reminder that their species had once been great and would be great again. He stood in the hangar on Keth 4, surrounded by ships that still waited to be woken, and Whisper spoke in his mind with something that might have been pride. You have done well, child of Earth. We have only just begun, Marcus replied. The silence is still coming. The cycle will turn again. And when it does, we need to be ready. Your ancestors believed that humanity could survive anything if it learned to rise from nothing, Whisper said. You have proven them right. Marcus thought about all the other seed vaults hidden across the galaxy, thousands of them waiting to be found, each one containing treasures beyond imagination. He thought about the human colonies that were already reaching out to each other, forming connections and building alliances that would make them stronger than they had ever been. He thought about the silence, the great darkness between galaxies that devoured everything it touched. And he felt no fear, because humans had faced extinction before, had chosen to start over from nothing, had crawled out of the mud on a single small world and reached for the stars. with nothing but determination and defiance. They had survived when they should have perished, remembered when they were supposed to forget, returned when they were meant to stay lost, and now they had a fleet and knowledge and purpose. The galaxy had spent centuries teaching humans that they were small and weak and insignificant. The galaxy was about to learn how wrong it had been. Marcus smiled and turned back to his work, preparing for the challenges yet to come, and above him the stars burned on forever. Ancient lights watching over the children of Earth who had finally found their way home. They had laughed. When he bought dead rock for 3 credits, they had stopped laughing when the dead woke up, and they would never laugh at humanity again.